I invite Dirk Helbing, who I have personally heard and being inspired about very interesting speeches on systems of systems, and actually how that relates to innovation. Dirk, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The problems of the world are complex. We are faced with climate change, with financial crisis, with conflict and war, and actually these problems threaten us. And unfortunately, our knowledge about this complex world lags behind. So how to change this? First of all, I think it's important to engage in citizen science and also crowdsourcing. And we also need to learn more about complex systems. And in fact, our body is a complex system. And we know that more medicine doesn't help more. So more wisdom is more needed than more power. And we need to learn how to be minimally invasive in order to improve systems that are complex. In fact, the big unsolved problems of the world result from systemic instabilities. And this includes crowd disasters, this includes traffic jams. And interestingly enough, even if we knew all the source of all the drivers, we couldn't predict this traffic jam. On the other hand, there are mathematical theories that allow us to understand the phenomenon. And basically says there are instabilities that create amplification effects and cascade effects, and that makes these systems get out of control. On the other hand, these mathematical theories also inform us how to overcome these kind of problems, and that's a systems design issue, and I will come back to this later on. We have similar problems in the control of supply chains, and even in the world economy, where booms and recessions are something like a stop-and-go phenomenon as we've seen it for traffic before. Crime is another example of unstable social dynamics. And tragedies of the commons, such as overfishing or exploitation of the environment, pollution, and many others. Here, cooperation would be good for everyone, but unfortunately it's an unstable situation in these social dilemma kind of situations as we have them for the production of common goods. And so the question is how to stabilize cooperation. Conflicts, again, an example of unstable dynamics, and also revolutions. These things can be understood through complexity science, and having more data is also essential to learn about these systems. And of course, we are now living in times of big data. In just 60 seconds, we're asking 700,000 queries to Google, 500,000 Facebook posts are being sent, and we also produce data with every single step we make, location data, consumption data, and so on and so on. However, given the pace of innovation in this digital sector, actually, we cannot dream to overtake Google or Facebook. We have this exponential innovation. We need to have a different approach in Europe in order to be able to compete. And I think this approach would be an ecosystem approach, where basically we're benefiting from each other's activities and knowledge. In this way, we can produce exponential innovation. Anyway, given that the amount of data produced in 1 year is as much as the data that have been produced in all the other years in human history, data in future will be cheap, I believe, and that means the value will be generated by transforming raw data into useful information and knowledge and wisdom. That means algorithms and services will be creating the value. Now, some years ago, we proposed the Future ICT project, and that actually was promoting these kind of ideas. So as you can see over here, we had this proposal to create a planetary nervous system, to create data that would inform people how to take better decisions. We had this idea to use the data for interactive virtual worlds, for exploratories, to build a living Earth simulator, a digital copy of the world. And also, we wanted to build participatory platforms because we realized that citizens and everyone else, I mean, the interaction between companies, between the public and between scientists and the citizens, that would be really crucial for success in future because we need to have more capacity, more speed in order to tackle the challenges of the future. Now, unfortunately, the project didn't come, but today I can present you some progress in terms of this planetary nervous system, which is actually an open platform, an open innovation platform. And so, in a sense, this is the universal tool of today, our smartphone, because it contains about 15 sensors. I don't use my smartphone to make phone calls most of the time, actually. So far, however, I haven't used these sensors much, So the question is, couldn't we turn that into a much more useful device, into an open innovation ecosystem? And in fact, we can do this. We can connect all these smartphones, have the sensors talk to each other, and this way we can even build a global measurement system together that would inform us about what is going on in any place of the world in real time. But we would want to do that in a way that's not spying on people, because we want to trust the system, right? We want to feel comfortable about this. And so the question is how to build a system that would give us all this information that we need in order to take better decisions and come up with new products and services, but at the same time we can feel comfortable with it. And so the idea is to build this planetary nervous system as a citizen web. I mean, all of us would build it together in a decentralized way. And we have actually thought about this, and it seems to be important that everyone can control which of these sensors to use. So you can decide whether you want to use it for yourself, but you can also decide to share the data produced by these sensors with others. We've done further things. For example, you can see noise here. So we're not using the microphone in order to record what you're saying, but we have degraded this microphone in such a way that it can only be used as a noise sensor, right? So we care about privacy. And then we also want to give you control over data about you once they have been generated, and for this a personal data store shall be devised that would allow you to administer basically all those data that are generated about you by anyone. So you could say, I'm willing to share my shopping data with companies because I want to get a personalized service or product or advertisement, but you may not want to share maybe your health data with everyone. Maybe you want, but anyway, so you would be able to decide this. You could also decide whom to share your social network data with and so on. Now let's give an example. In particular, there's these acceleration sensors in your smartphone. So when your smartphone shakes, this can be recorded, and there's an X, Y, Z direction. And the question is, what can we do with it? So if just one of our smartphones would shake, we would think maybe that's a mountain bike ride. But if all of our smartphones are shaking at the same time, that would probably mean that's an earthquake, And in this kind of situation, the collective evaluation of all these signals could be used in order to alert our friends and family and colleagues in order to get out into a safe space. So it would help us actually to deal with dangerous situations, and know that we're not looking into a single smartphone's data, but we're aggregating over the data of many smartphones over here. Yeah. So why don't we do this together and create a participatory system, both in terms of data, so build something like a Wikipedia with real-time data for everyone, But not only data would be shared, but also codes. So the success principle of this is taking and giving in a fair way. So you can take data that you think you would need to provide some consultancy or service or product, but you should also give some data back, because this is how such an ecosystem would work. Now, we cannot hope for Google to give us the data we'd like to have, or for Facebook to give us the data. So let's produce these data ourselves. What are we waiting for? We can do that now. And then there are many ways to produce all these data that we would be interested in. You know, at my team at ETH Zurich, we might have 10 ideas or 100 ideas how to measure, what to do with these measurements, and so on. But you have ideas as well. And so you should have the possibilities to plug this in. So this is going to be not just an app, it's going to be a platform where you can have your own apps on top, you know, both commercial and non-commercial. You can download source code, you can modify it, and in this way you can produce new applications. So in this way, actually, we believe we would create an ecosystem of ideas, of measurements, of procedures, of possibilities, of innovations, of services and products. So the idea is to create new opportunities for everyone, for business, for politics, for science, and for the citizens. So if set up well, enabling users, customers, citizens will lead to better services, better products, better businesses, better neighborhoods, smarter cities, and smarter societies. And everyone would be able to establish an own business with this data. You could even produce new products. You know, if you use 3D printers, you could actually produce it for the entire world. So you could have a global business. And for this, of course, we would need to have a payment system. So we would have to build this on top. That's actually one of my concerns right now, that we would build that as quickly as possible, because who knows how long the financial system will be stable. So we'd better have a backup system. Now, interestingly enough, what is money? Money is basically a coordination mechanism. But there could be many coordination mechanisms how to distribute resources. We could be innovative. In fact, you know, Bitcoin is a very good example for an idea that managed to turn bits into almost gold. You know, it became more valuable than gold for some time, in fact. And so this really shows you that now we can turn ideas and bits into gold. We just need to be innovative. In fact, I think those societies that make best use of the special properties of information and allow good ideas to spread, these will be leading in future. And so we need to understand what are those special properties of information. Because information is very different from gold, you know. Gold you would kind of protect, you would make sure nobody is going to take it. But gold cannot be used for everything. You wouldn't build a plane from gold. It would be too heavy. So gold has special properties, steel has special properties, wood has special properties, and you use each material for what it's good at, depending on the properties. So the question is, what are the special properties of information? How to use information? In fact, it turns out information is not a durable good, it's a perishable good, actually. You know, nobody wants to have old, outdated information. The interesting point is information is not a material. It can be shared as often as we like. So if you want more of it, we don't have to take it away from others. And that's interesting because we don't need to engage in conflict for it. It's actually not a zero-sum game. We can create more for everyone. And this is interesting, you know. And how do we do this? Well, if you think about exponential innovation, and this is maybe a good visualization of it, no, this is, we need to have interaction with others in order to create this exponential innovation. And In fact, that's very different from the processes that we have engaged in the past. So a car company traditionally is coming up with a new model of a car every 2 years, say. This is linear innovation. But what we want to have and what we need is exponential innovation. Why do we need exponential innovation? Because the digital revolution will take away a lot of classical jobs. And so we need to create new kinds of jobs, and for this we need to have this digital innovation ecosystem approach, where people are producing new things, other people can modify it and take it back to the system, and the more things are being created, the more new things, I mean services and products, are becoming possible. So that's the issue. So NervousNet could be creating a really powerful platform for us, for everyone, and actually it's not a dream anymore. This is happening, and I have a team of young, dedicated people who are working on this. And so the question is, what can we do with this parent nervous system? It's actually quite powerful in perspective. So we can do real-time measurement of our world, what's going on out there right now in any place. We could create greater awareness of chances and risks to support everyone's decision making, but it will also inform science to understand the world much better, complexity science, global system science. And the most exciting thing about it is we can create self-organizing system that would come up with the properties, with the structure, with the functionality we'd like to have almost by itself. The only thing it takes is the right kind of interactions between the system components, and this can now be done, as I will show later on. And finally, create collective intelligence. So let's give a few more examples. What can we do with this NervousNet? Well, we could, for example, map noise in the city or in an entire country or around the world. We could map luminosity. And in fact, there's now a YouTube video that demonstrates this. So as you can see over here, there are a number of people with smartphones with NervousNet up on there. And they're now going to make a competition of who catches more light. I mean, this is just a simple, funny demonstration showing you that we can do these collective measurements right now. It's working. So, create more awareness for better decision making. Well, that's certainly very important both in politics and business and in science too. And so we can now create new compasses for decision makers that's not only measuring GDP per capita, but other important things, like environment, health, but also social capital, such as reputation, trust, solidarity, compliance, or even happiness. So all of this matters, of course. We could have tools to map crisis. We can now map resources and who uses them, and many more things. In fact, we can even map the entire world in 3D with the information which is already out there, because people are uploading a lot of photos every day about any place in the world that people are interested in, and can put this information together to reconstruct the world in 3D, as it has been done over here for the Colosseum, but in fact it can be done for any other place. So these things are possible now. Complexity science is also making great progress, and so eventually we're learning how to let socioeconomic systems and the forces behind them work for us, as we've learned to use the laws of nature in engineering. And so we can use these forces behind our socioeconomic systems to our advantages once we understand them. And here are some examples of how it works. So today still, we're confronted with these annoying stop-and-go waves. Congestion is nerving us every day. And this simulation just shows you at the moment that we can understand it, that we can reproduce it in a computer and even with mathematics. Now, what's happening here? Well, if we elevate ourselves from this car, we'll see that there is actually an on-ramp, and so there are a few cars that are trying to squeeze themselves on the freeway. It's producing small disruptions. And these are amplified because of the unstable dynamic of traffic flow. Now, if we equip all these cars with radar sensors that measure the distances and relative velocities, we can have these cars drive in an automated way. And we can modify the interaction between the cars in a way that's not only increasing comfort, but also the stability of traffic flow and the capacity. And so we can produce collective effects, even though in this example, cars are only interacting on a local basis, that means in a decentralized way. That's very interesting because this approach can be generalized to many other problems, such as urban traffic flow. So we've come up with a self-organized traffic light control where the traffic flows are controlling the traffic lights. And it turns out that's creating dramatic improvements actually for public transportation, some improvements also for motorized traffic, and it's also good for pedestrians, cyclists, and for the environment. So it's an entirely new approach based on self-organization. The only thing it takes is to implement the right kind of interactions between the system components. And so the question comes up, can we now build assistance systems even for social systems, for cooperation, for example? And the answer is yes, we can do this. And in fact, Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom has shown this. She's made observations in Switzerland, and she's shown that self-governance can be efficient given proper design principles. So again, the kind of interactions matter, and we can now understand it. And one example for such a system are reputation systems, because they help us to increase quality. But I think we need to further improve these reputation systems to make them multi-dimensional. And certainly, diversity is a very important driver for innovation, it's a very important basis for resilience in our society, for collective intelligence, many other things. But diversity is also a challenge. And in order to turn diversity into an advantage, we need to create interoperability. And in fact, we see first digital assistants helping us to overcome intercultural barriers. So we can talk into our smartphone. If you have the right kind of app, it would translate in real time into another language. So that's helping us to overcome cultural barriers. And we can do that on a much larger scale with much more challenging tasks. And actually, we can create different kinds of digital assistants in order to help us to improve our situational awareness, to identify profitable interactions and engage with others, other people, other companies more successfully, to avoid lossful interactions, and also to incentivize value transfer, where it can turn basically win-lose situations into win-win situations. So what I'm trying to say is 300 years after the invention of this concept of the invisible hand, we can now make it work, because unfortunately it didn't always work. Technology now allows us to make it work, and this technology is the Internet of Things, and the science needed for this is complexity science. So we can use sensor networks now to create all these real-time information about the state of the world around us, of all the components that might get out of control. And then the idea is not to have a top-down control of every component of the system, but to introduce the right kind of feedback loops in the system, so the system would self-organize and stabilize the right kind of structure or properties or functionality that we'd like to have. And then the system self-organizes like magic. And we can apply that even on a societal scale. So we can reach multi-level coordination with incentive systems. We don't need to have a big nudging mechanism, but what we need basically to support this subsidiarity principle is a multi-dimensional finance system where we have multi-dimensional incentives and a value exchange system. So we need to build this now. I told you before, money is just a coordination mechanism. We can build this much better coordination mechanism for the world of the future right now, and Europe should do this. And finally, we need to create collective intelligence because the world has become so complex that a single person, a single supercomputer cannot understand it anymore. So we need to combine our knowledge and our best ideas together in order to manage the complexity of this world. And I think actually collective intelligence is superior to superintelligence because this is a combinatorial kind of intelligence. We can combine people's knowledge and creativity to address different kinds of problems with different kinds of goal functions. And this is really what we need in a world of combinatorial complexity. The interesting point about collective intelligence is it's not the best team that wins, it's diversity that wins. So you need to have a number of different teams that are trying to find good solutions independently of each other and then combine these different approaches in a new way so you would get something which is even better than what the best team has delivered. So diversity is an asset, and Europe has a lot of diversity, so let's use it. Let's get ready and join the NervousNet community today. Thank you very much.